Every single day begins the same way for every human being. We wake up. Whether we open our eyes in a penthouse or a one-bedroom apartment, whether we have a to-do list packed with high-stakes meetings or no obligations at all, there is something every one of us has in common, a decision to make. Most people don't see it. It slips past them in those first few moments as their minds rush to the demands of the day or the weight of yesterday. But that choice is there, and it is the most important one you'll make all day. Will I live by habit today, or will I live by vision? Habit is powerful. It's automatic. It doesn't require thought, planning, or courage. It's the familiar path you've walked 1,000 times. You brush your teeth the same way. You check your phone, scroll through the same feeds, drink your coffee from the same mug. You speak to the same people with the same tone. You show up to work with the same energy, the same thoughts, the same internal stories. Habit is your brain's way of conserving energy. It's the autopilot mode of survival. But vision demands intention. Vision forces you to pause, to see beyond the moment. Living by vision means you no longer allow your external circumstances to dictate your internal standards. You don't repeat yesterday simply because it's comfortable. You don't react, you create. You move through your day not asking, what do I have to do? But who do I want to become? And that shift from habit to vision is where transformation begins. Most people spend their lives mastering habits that reinforce mediocrity. It's not because they lack potential. It's because their vision hasn't taken control. The body is moving, the calendar is full, but the soul is asleep. You're reacting to life, not designing it. And if you're not designing your life, someone else is doing it for you. Your boss, your past, your fears, your social media feed. Every one of them will offer you a version of life to live, but it won't be yours unless you take the wheel. The difference between habit and vision can be seen in how people start their day. When you live by habit, the day owns you. You're responding to alarms, emails, texts, problems. You're running from one moment to the next, hoping to stay afloat. When you live by vision, you own the day. You begin with clarity. You choose what energy you'll bring, what mindset you'll adopt, what values you'll act on. You start with who, not what. Who do I want to be as a parent today? As a leader? As a human? Vision gives your choices depth. It gives your time meaning. Habit makes your life repeat. Vision makes it evolve. It's easy to say, well, I'm too busy for all that. I've got things to do, people to answer to, bills to pay. That's the voice of habit talking. That's the voice of the unconscious self, the one who trades possibility for predictability. But here's the truth. Your schedule is not the problem. Your standards are. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And the root system of all results is your daily choice. Will I show up as the person I've always been or the person I'm becoming? Vision doesn't require perfection. It doesn't mean you need to know every step of the path. It just means you're willing to stop letting your past write your future. You're willing to dream again, not someday, but right now. You're willing to sit with the discomfort of change because you know that nothing extraordinary grows in the comfort zone. Habit wants comfort. Vision demands courage. And the truth is, your current life is a reflection of your most consistent habits. That's not a judgment, it's an invitation. Because the same force that got you here can be redirected to take you somewhere new. You just have to wake up on purpose. You have to interrupt the pattern. You have to ask yourself, what do I truly want my life to be about? What would it look like if I stopped living by reaction and started living by design? The people who change their lives, really change them, aren't always the smartest, richest, or most experienced. They're the ones who stopped being okay with living on repeat. They're the ones who got sick of being at the mercy of moods, memories, and momentum. They broke the script. They stopped chasing motivation and started chasing meaning. Living by vision doesn't mean every moment feels inspired. It doesn't mean you'll never fall back into old patterns. It means that no matter how many times you stumble, you remember who you're becoming. You remember that your life is bigger than your habits. You remember that you weren't born just to survive another Monday. You were born to build, to lead, to love deeply, to contribute, to grow. When you live by vision, you are no longer a prisoner of your circumstances. You become the architect of your future, not in grand, cinematic ways, but in the small, unseen moments, the moments where no one's watching, but your future is listening. The moments where you choose to rise, even when it would be easier to retreat. The moments where you say, not this time. This time, I choose something greater. Everything in your life is a mirror of who you believe you are, not who you wish you were, not who you tell others you are, but who deep down you've decided you are over and over again. That identity, that internal definition is the silent driver of every choice you make. It shapes what you tolerate, what you pursue, how you respond to challenge, how you define success, and most importantly, what you believe is possible. Most people think their life is the result of their environment, their education, their background, or their circumstances. But the truth is far more powerful and far more confronting. Your life is the result of the standards and expectations you've attached to your identity. When someone says, I'm just not a morning person, they're not describing a habit, they're describing a belief that has become part of their identity. And so what happens? Every morning becomes harder. Every early task feels unnatural because the mind and body are following the blueprint of the identity. But the moment someone says, I'm the kind of person who gets up early and takes charge of the day, something changes. It may not happen overnight, but the alignment between belief and behavior starts to form. And that's the power of identity. You will fight to stay consistent with who you believe you are. Think about how many times people sabotage progress. They lose weight, then gain it back. They get into a healthy relationship, then push it away. They land a great opportunity, then procrastinate until it falls apart. This isn't a discipline problem. It's an identity conflict. If someone still sees themselves as unworthy, not good enough, the black sheep, or the failure, then any result that contradicts that image will eventually be rejected. The external may shift temporarily, but the internal hasn't been upgraded, and so life pulls them back into alignment with the old self. This is why surface level change doesn't last. You can change your schedule, your wardrobe, your circle of friends, even your job. But if you don't change the way you see yourself, your life will bend itself back to match the old identity. It's not punishment, it's programming. And unless you interrupt that programming, you will keep finding yourself back at square one, wondering why nothing sticks. Your identity acts like a thermostat. If your internal setting is at 70 degrees and life heats up to 85, more money, more success, better relationships, you will unconsciously bring it back down to 70. You'll start an argument. You'll blow the opportunity. You'll sabotage the breakthrough. Not because you're broken, but because your subconscious is working to bring your external world back into harmony with your internal identity. And the opposite is also true. If things fall below your identity, let's say life cools to 50 degrees, you'll take action. You'll hustle, fix, and adjust until you're back at 70. You rise or fall to meet the identity you've locked in. The only way to truly change your life is to raise your internal setting, to expand your identity, to move from, I'm trying to be better, to this is who I am now. That shift is subtle but massive. It's the difference between acting out of obligation and acting from ownership. It's the difference between short-term motivation and long-term transformation. And it starts with language. Identity is reinforced by the words you use, not just in conversation with others, but in the thoughts you rehearse all day long. Every time you say, I always, I never, the kind of person who you are reinforcing an identity. So the question becomes, are you reinforcing the identity of the person you used to be or the person you want to become? Because if you want a better life, you need to upgrade the story. You need to tell a new narrative, one that doesn't wait for external proof to believe in internal change, one that leads your behavior instead of reacting to it. People often think confidence comes from results, but the most powerful confidence is born from alignment when your actions match your values and your identity matches your vision. You start showing up differently. You speak with conviction. You walk into rooms like you belong there, not because someone gave you permission, but because your identity finally matches your destiny. This is the foundation of all sustainable growth. Every goal you've ever failed to achieve wasn't blocked by time or talent. It was blocked by identity. A goal that conflicts with identity will always be rejected, no matter how desirable it looks on paper. You can want financial freedom, but if you see yourself as someone who's bad with money, you'll repel wealth. You can crave deep love, but if you see yourself as unlovable, you'll sabotage intimacy. Until your identity rises, your destiny remains stuck. Change doesn't start with action. It starts with identity. When you begin to see yourself differently, you behave differently. And when you behave differently over time, the world responds. New doors open. New relationships form. New levels of possibility emerge. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Every result in your life can be traced back to a pattern, a sequence of thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that have become so familiar, so automatic, that you rarely question them. These patterns form the foundation of your reality. You wake up and think the same thoughts. Those thoughts trigger the same emotions. Those emotions lead to the same actions. And those actions create the same results. Day after day, month after month, year after year, until one day you look around and realize that the life you have is not the life you want, but it's the life your patterns have built. Patterns are not inherently bad. They are your brain's way of creating efficiency. If you had to consciously think through every step of brushing your teeth or driving your car, you'd burn out in an hour. Patterns save energy. But what happens when the patterns are outdated? What happens when the patterns are tied to survival, but not success? When they're rooted in fear, not vision? When they're built around avoiding pain instead of pursuing growth? Then those same efficient routines become cages, invisible prisons that keep you stuck in cycles you never consciously chose. The problem is that most people don't even see the pattern. They only see the outcome. Why do I always end up in toxic relationships? Why do I procrastinate when things start going well? Why do I feel like I'm stuck no matter how hard I try? These are not surface level problems. They are symptoms of deeper, ingrained patterns. And until you interrupt the pattern, the results will repeat. Pattern interruption is not a gimmick. It's not a trick. It's a fundamental principle of transformation. If you want a different life, you must create a break in the cycle, a moment where you no longer accept the automatic response and instead insert a new decision. That moment might feel small, almost insignificant, but it is the birthplace of change. When you catch yourself spiraling into self-doubt and stop. When you interrupt the urge to blame and choose to take ownership. When you break the routine of avoidance and face the task you've been putting off. These are not minor shifts. These are seismic cracks in the foundation of the old self. Most people think change is hard because they try to change their behavior without changing the pattern underneath it. They start a new diet, but don't address the emotional eating pattern. They set a new goal, but don't interrupt the pattern of self-sabotage. They try to be more productive, but don't break the pattern of perfectionism that keeps them frozen. So they keep bouncing between intention and regression. Forward for a week, backward for a month. Not because they're lazy or unmotivated, but because they haven't addressed the root. To truly interrupt a pattern, you must become aware of your state. Your state is the combination of your focus, physiology, and language at any given moment. When you're in a disempowered state, your patterns run on autopilot. You react, you repeat, you regress. But the moment you shift your state, change your posture, change your breath, change your internal dialogue, you create a space between stimulus and response. And in that space, you gain the power to choose a new response. That is where freedom begins. One of the most effective ways to interrupt a pattern is to change your physiology. Your body holds the history of your patterns. Anxiety has a posture. Depression has a rhythm. Confidence has a breath. When you stand differently, breathe differently, move differently, you send a signal to your nervous system that a new story is being written. Combine that with new focus, shifting from what's wrong to what's possible, and new language, replacing I can't with I will figure this out, and you begin to rewire the loop. You also have to challenge the beliefs that support the pattern. Behind every repetitive struggle is a belief that keeps it alive. Maybe it's, I'm not worthy, success always comes with a cost, or people always leave. These beliefs are not facts. They are stories that got repeated so often in moments of emotion and vulnerability that they became rules. When you catch yourself living by an old rule, you must confront it, question it, break it. Ask yourself, who taught me this? Is it serving me? What if the opposite is true? Because if you don't challenge the belief, the pattern will keep winning, no matter how much willpower you apply. Another powerful way to interrupt the pattern is to change your environment. Sometimes it's not about having more discipline, it's about removing the trigger. If scrolling your phone is the pattern, delete the app. If your energy crashes every time you talk to someone who drains you, limit your access. If your creativity dies in the clutter of your home, clear the space. Your environment is not neutral. It's either reinforcing the old pattern or empowering the new one. Change happens in moments of awareness and decision, but those moments must be repeated until they become your new normal. Interrupting the pattern once is not enough. You must condition the new behavior, install the new identity, and wire in the new emotional responses. Over time, the pattern loses its grip, it weakens, it no longer defines you. Because you didn't just think about changing, you acted in defiance of the old you. You created a fracture in the loop, and that fracture became the opening for your future to walk through. One of the most widespread illusions people carry is the idea that if they could just be more comfortable, they would finally be happy. It's the silent bargain most of society has made. Work hard now so you can rest later, chase security so you can feel peace, eliminate problems so you can enjoy life. But that equation never delivers the result it promises. Because happiness, real, sustained, soul-level happiness, is not a byproduct of comfort. It is the result of growth, meaning, and challenge. Comfort may feel good in the short term, but it never satisfies in the long term. And the reason is simple: the human spirit was not built to coast, it was built to climb. Look around at anyone who has ever done something extraordinary, and you will never find someone who got there by choosing what was easy. Fulfillment is forged in the fire of effort. Whether it's the entrepreneur who poured years into a vision nobody believed in, the athlete who trained through pain and exhaustion, the parent who sacrificed everything to give their child a better life, the through line is the same. Happiness came not from escaping the hard moments, but from discovering who they became by going through them. Comfort can numb you. It's seductive because it feels like safety, but it comes at a cost. When you spend too long in comfort, your hunger fades. Your vision dulls, your edge softens. You trade your potential for predictability. You stop stretching because stretching means strain, and strain feels like danger. Even though it's the doorway to transformation, growth and comfort cannot coexist. You must choose. And most people, without realizing it, choose comfort. They choose it when they avoid the difficult conversation, when they delay the bold move, when they stay in the job, the relationship, the routine that's no longer aligned just because it's familiar. But familiar doesn't mean right. Familiar often means unexamined. It means tolerated. There is a reason why people feel most alive during moments of progress. Not when they've arrived, but when they're moving towards something that matters. When they are sweating, stretching, striving, because in those moments, something deeper than comfort is activated. Purpose. That's the word that matters. Comfort is about what you feel. Purpose is about what you're building. And it's in the pursuit of purpose that happiness begins to take root. Not surface level pleasure, but deep fulfillment. The kind that doesn't disappear when the weekend ends or when circumstances shift. It's not that rest and recovery aren't important. They are. But they're only meaningful when they're earned through exertion. Rest without growth becomes stagnation. Stillness without movement becomes decay. When you earn your rest through effort, it feels different. It feels deserved. It carries the echo of the mountain you climbed, the courage you summoned, the decisions you made when quitting would have been easier. We are wired to want ease, but we are built to endure challenge. That's why the most powerful stories, the ones that move us, shape us, and stay with us, are never about someone who had it easy. They're about someone who rose, someone who was knocked down and came back stronger, someone who kept going when the odds said stop. Those stories don't just entertain us, they awaken something in us, a knowing, a recognition that we, too, are capable of more than we think, but only if we're willing to step beyond the threshold of what's comfortable. Fear often hides behind the mask of comfort. It tells you to play it safe. Wait until the timing is perfect, until the conditions are right. But fear will always find a reason to delay your evolution. And the more you listen to it, the more you shrink. Not overnight, but slowly. You begin to rationalize your limitations. You start settling for almost. You become more focused on preserving what you have than becoming who you were meant to be. And the worst part is, you won't even notice it happening. Because comfort doesn't feel like danger until it becomes regret. There is no growth without resistance. A muscle doesn't get stronger by staying relaxed. It breaks down tears and rebuilds. That's the cycle. And your life is no different. The challenges you face are not obstacles. Invitations to evolve, to rise, to reach for a version of yourself that cannot be found on the couch or in the comfort zone. Every challenge, every discomfort is feedback. It's life asking, are you ready for more? Are you willing to expand? What most people call happiness is actually the avoidance of pain. But real happiness is born from facing the pain and emerging with strength. It's what happens when you stop trying to feel good all the time and start focusing on what's worth feeling. What's worth fighting for? What's worth building even when it's uncomfortable? Comfort will ask you to settle. Growth will ask you to stretch. And in that stretch is where the most meaningful moments of your life will be found. There is a moment in every person's life when they feel the pull, the quiet, undeniable call towards something greater. It may come as a whisper, a sense that life could be more than routines and responsibilities, or it may come as a scream, a breakdown, a crisis, a sudden jolt that everything must change. But however it arrives, it always delivers the same message: this is not all there is. Something inside you knows there is more to experience, more to give, more to become. Yet most people ignore the call, not because they don't feel it, but because they're waiting for permission, waiting for someone to say it's okay to want more, okay to dream bigger, okay to break the rules that have kept them small. From the time we are young, we are taught to ask to speak, ask to move, ask to be seen. And so we grow into adults who continue to ask, not out loud, but internally. We ask the world to approve of us before we act. We wait for qualifications before we claim our potential. We wait for certainty before we take risks. We wait for guarantees before we commit. But the truth is, nobody is coming to grant you permission to live your life fully. There is no judge, no committee, no authority figure that will tap you on the shoulder and say, you're ready now. That moment is yours to declare. Most people never step into their power because they are still hoping someone else will validate their readiness. They want proof they can succeed before they begin. They want applause before they take the stage. But that's not how it works. Life doesn't reward hesitation. It rewards boldness. The people who rise, the ones who shift their destiny, are not always the most qualified. They are the ones who gave themselves permission to try before they had it all figured out. They moved before they were fully confident. They said yes while still feeling the fear. Waiting for permission is the most subtle form of self-rejection. It's telling yourself that your voice doesn't count unless someone else agrees. It's believing that your value must be validated externally before it can matter internally. And the longer you wait, the more distant your potential becomes. Not because it's going anywhere, but because you are. You drift further from your truth every time you choose comfort over courage, silence over expression, hesitation over action. There will always be a reason to wait. Someone will always have an opinion. Fear will always have something to say. And your mind will always find evidence to support your doubts. But none of that changes the fact that the only permission you need is your own. The moment you stop outsourcing your power, everything shifts. You begin to move differently, think differently, decide differently. Because now you're no longer performing for approval. You're acting from alignment. You were not born to blend in. You were not created to follow instructions written by people who don't understand your soul. You were designed with a unique combination of talents, passions, experiences, and perspectives. And that combination is not random. It's not accidental. It's a message, a blueprint, a signal that your life is supposed to look different. But if you spend your time waiting for someone to tell you it's safe to be who you are, you'll never become who you were meant to be. You'll play roles, wear masks, and live versions of life that feel acceptable, but never true. Giving yourself permission means stepping into responsibility. It means understanding that no one is coming to save you. And that's not a tragedy, it's a turning point. Because once you take full ownership, you realize that you are not a victim of your circumstances. You are the architect. You are the source. You get to create, decide, speak, move, lead, and live. Not someday, but now. Your vision is not up for debate. Your desires don't need explanation. The life you want to build doesn't have to make sense to the people around you. It has to make sense to your soul. And the only way to honor that soul is to stop seeking consensus and start seeking conviction. You don't need permission to be bold, to speak your truth, to build the business, write the book, Leave the job. Start the movement or a life differently than those who came before you. The only thing you need is the courage to say yes to yourself. It's easy to believe that someone else has the authority over your destiny. That may be once you've read enough books, taken enough courses, gained enough approval, you'll finally feel worthy of the life you want. But worthiness isn't earned, it's claimed. It's a decision you make when you're tired of shrinking. A decision that no longer waits for the timing to be right, because the right time is whenever you decide to begin. Your life expands in proportion to the risks you are willing to take without external validation. And the irony is, the very validation you seek usually comes after you no longer need it, because the world responds to people who are grounded in their own authority. When you stop apologizing for wanting more, more becomes available. When you stop waiting for the door to open, you realize you had the key all along. When you stop asking if you're allowed to go after it, you start building it. The life you want isn't waiting on luck, timing, or permission. It's waiting on you. Everything you've heard, every shift in mindset, every pattern to interrupt, every identity to expand, points to one truth. You are the author, not the audience. You can continue living by default, shaped by habits, doubts, and limitations. Or you can decide to rise, to lead with vision, to rewrite the story you tell yourself, to seek growth over comfort, and to move without waiting for someone else to say it's your turn. This isn't about motivation. It's about transformation. And transformation begins the moment you stop chasing the life you think you're supposed to live and start creating the one you're truly meant for.